And I'm delighted now to bring Chris Magero to the floor. Chris, thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot, Constance. And I think I'm delighted, first of all, to be here. Can everybody hear me? Is okay? Good. So yeah, I'm delighted to be here and just to, give a perspective, a global perspective of this. I work with IUCN, and for the last 2 decades and a bit, we have been working on rangelands, drylands, and pastoralism in a broad sense. So I would just give a taste because most of the speakers have already in a sense, created a foundation for what, I was going to say. So I will kind of skip through some of these slides, but just let me know that you see the slides first. It's okay?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So just as a start point to point out that, when we talk about drylands, we are talking more about areas defined by water scarcity. I think we know this broadly from the practitioners here. But it's a place that is defined by climatic extremes, unpredictable rainfall. Fiona mentioned about the importance of drylands, and I think it's just good to reiterate that again. There's a lot of richness in drylands, just to put it at, very basic terms. And there's a lot of products. I mean, if you look at the livestock, that can be produced in some countries, it makes up to, I think in Chad, 30% of agricultural GDP. Cashmere production in Mongolia. There is a lot of potential within rangelands, and I think it has been adequately mentioned, by the speakers before me. The population, again, this is important to point out, but we have a lot of people living in drylands. It cannot be understated, the number of people. Drylands are caught up in one perpetual narrative of unsustainability. It's a cyclic narrative that we face, but this is one of the points where, we experience loss of fertility, we experience loss of biodiversity, and this now leads to the problems that we're seeing. I just put up this slide to point out that around the world, a lot of countries, have already committed through the land degradation neutrality target setting, which is a target setting under the UNCCD. They have committed to improve their drylands. 124 countries, I think it's now 127. But there is already huge potential globally to do something about this. One of the other things I wanted just to mention in a very brief sense is we are facing a lot of impacts already within the drylands. Climate change itself will exacerbate what we see in drylands. We know, I mean, some of the figures here, as you can see by the projection of the IPCC report, saying, the frequency of 46 times dry seasons. And I think one of the speakers, I think it was Fiona who mentioned the growing seasons. You can imagine if we are losing 46 growing seasons within, a certain setting, that is much more than we experience now. But even at the moment, we are not in a good place. This is just to say that, we are going to face even, more extreme times here in the future. So what does grazing look like? And I thank God for the 2 examples that we've had from Rolf and Makita, that, there is a process. And for me, one of the things is to point out here is that water is an essential part of grazing lands. And we know it, and I just like to just reiterate it. How we manage our lands will lead to better biodiversity, better ecosystem services, better water holding capacity for the ground, soil facility, carbon. But we have to think about how we manage our ecosystems. And IUCN has been involved in this, for quite a number of years through, quite a number of projects. But one of the things that I'd like to point out that, within this, we talk about now some mechanics that, have been pointed out. What are the stocking rates, grazing intensities? Do we, go through, a single grazing or double grazing? what does that lead to in terms of the input from the animals that we put out for grazing, the manure, the soil nutrients, how they contribute to the nutrient cycling. So nutrient cycling is not only water, but also we're looking at carbon, we're looking at nitrogen. How does it lead to that? In addition to that, what are the physical actions that these animals have, to the environments where we are? And based on that, a manipulation of the timing and intensity and production in order for us to see a vibrant system. So what I'm trying to say is that it is quite a complex system when you look at grazing livestock, especially within rangelands. And one of the key things to this system, is it is quite strongly embedded within governance. Yeah, and some of these practices are dying away as communities and as community governance systems are disenfranchised. This is through, sometimes elite takeover, sometimes by inappropriate development. Agriculture expansion, as Fiona already showed, these are some of the things that are already contributing to, a negative impact on these places. To reinstitute these things, we have to think about the complexity of these processes. And for me, the complexity then becomes looking at the governance within the system, looking at the land rights. Communities need to feel safe to be able to implement these processes. And I think we have had a few examples of how this is done. So just in conclusion for me is, when we're looking at the systems, is that there's a great potential to reach multiple goals when you talk about grazing systems. It contributes not only to, cultural ways, we know that, but also it can contribute to sustainable development goals, to our restoration goals across the globe. Extensive grazing, which includes pastoral, play certainly an important role in ecosystem balance. We talk about rangelands. That one is one of the things that I think, if anything, we should take home with us. I know there are a lot of narratives that talk about, extirpating grazing and pastoralists, but it plays quite a central role to that. But we must pay attention to the factors that we've heard today. We talked about good governance, tenure security, gender inclusiveness, among other things. So I will end there, and thank you very much for that. And back to the organizers, back to you.
Thank you so much, Chris. That was extraordinary. And in such a short period of time, I think all of us now want that graphic as our screensaver. It was tremendous. And thank you for putting it all in a nutshell. Really appreciate it.